What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with Reactions to the Classics. And today we got a top 10 reaction to Stan Rogers' songs. Brought to us by friend, longtime supporter, and Patreon channel, River. Thank you, River. Appreciate you and all the new stuff you bring to us here at the channel. Appreciate all the patrons. We couldn't do it without them. If you'd like to help us out in any way, check out that Patreon link below or the Patreon link on the end screen. Now, I never even heard of Stan Rogers, but River gave us a great background and a little bit about Stan Rogers as a musician. To paraphrase the Dreadnoughts song, Dear Old Stan, which I have a Dreadnoughts that I've up on the channel that River brought. Go check that out after this. The Yanks have Woody Guthrie. The Celts have got the Coreys and Ronnie Drew. Canada has Stan Rogers as the big name of their folk tradition. So much so that besides O Canada, his song Northwest Passage was voted on a radio station as the song to replace it as the national anthem of Canada. Now that is high praise. His songs have been covered extensively, not just by folk acts, but by metal acts such as Unleash the Archers and Ailstorm, as well as folk punk act, the aforementioned Dreadnoughts, and various traditional folk acts, of course. Stan died tragically young after a fire on the plane he was on from Cincinnati, which touched down in Kentucky, where he died. He's still, however, among the most influential Canadian folk musicians, and in my view at least, top 5 Canadian musicians, period, if not the best some days for me anyway. Wow. A story for the second song, one that touches me greatly. The song Mary Ellen Carter was thought of by a sailor who had been aboard a ship that sank. While sure he was going to die, the song's lyrics came to him and began singing them and survived the sinking of a ship, the Marine Electric. And I will talk about that in a little while. The Dreadnoughts cite him as having likely invented the phrase folk punk for his song Oh No, Not I, as he used it in liner notes when that album first came out. And we may or may not get to that song in a little bit, but if you've never been with us before, just a reminder, the music will not be in the video, but it'll be at a Vimeo link below. So click on that and follow along with us. Let's kick this thing off with number 10. We have McDonald on the Heights from Freshwater album in 1984. This is a posthumous album. It's one of a series of concept albums Stan intended to do about the region of Canada. From Freshwater is about the Great Lakes area of Canada. Provided in the album liner notes, Stan's widow Ariel Rogers provides context for this song. She said, quote, another unsung hero of Canadian history. The text gives a terribly sparse accounting of this man. He was a major under Brock and apparently not a very popular one. He was kind of one of those good young men from the right kind of family with the right kind of gentleman's education, a law practice, and the ear of influential people of the day. There's nothing to indicate he was not a decent sort, but somebody writing up the accounts didn't want too much of the glory to be taken from the general. Perhaps this is one way of vindicating the historical vagaries of this nation. It gives me no small amount of satisfaction to think that more people will know that there's more than just Brock under that huge stone monument. All right, I'm going to have the lyrics up as always. Obviously, I'm not from Canada. I've never heard of Stan. So some of this stuff might be a little lost on me, but I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. Love great songwriters. Thank you to River for bringing this one. Let's get after it. All right, McDonald on the Heights. What a fantastic voice Stan has, right? Just pulls you in, man. And it is just about McDonald, right? To say the name McDonald would bring no bugle call, but the redcoats stayed beside you when they saw the general fall. 'Twas McDonald raised the banner then and set the heights aflame, but the refrains, but not 1 in 10,000 knows your name. Of course, you brought the field all standing with your courage and your luck, but unknown to most, you're lying there beside old General Brock. So you know what it is to scale the heights and fall just short of fame and have not 1 in 10,000 know your name. But it's really cool that he did that, right? It's really well done. Next up, we have The Witch of Westmoreland, although we're going to say this a few different ways, from Between the Breaks Live in 1979. Our next 3 songs are actually going to be from that album. The album was recorded at the Groaning Board in Toronto, Ontario, written by Archie Fisher and first released in 1986. The song tells the story of a knight wounded in battle. The wound festers and does not heal, and he learns that only the Witch of Westmoreland, there are many spellings and there are many covers, can make him hail and sound again. Stan Rogers in the liner notes to this album said, I first heard this song on Archie Fisher's beautiful album for Folk Legacy Records, The Man with the Rhyme, where it is called The Witch of the Westmorelands. In a recent letter, Archie referred to it as simply Westmoreland, and I've used that spelling here. We have edited 3 verses from the original and modernized the language a little for the sake of having the story understood by the average North American listener at the first pass, which I appreciate, Stan. Let's go. The Witch of the Westmoreland, which we're going to call it here, for our purposes, just really well done. I mean, you know when a great songwriter sings somebody else's song, it's got to be a great song. It's a fantastic song, and it ends up well at the end as she bound his wounds with the golden rod, full fast in her arms he lay, and as he's risen hale and sound with the sun high in the day. She said, ride with your bridled hound at heel and your good greyhawk in hand. There's none that can harm the knight who's lain with the witch of the Westmoreland. So Stan's voice just lends great to this. His brother is on the violins, playing the violin on here, Garnett Rogers, his younger brother, and he's playing the 12 string, which gives it that just wonderful tone, man. Next up at number 8, we got Harris and the Mare. Same album as I told you, Between the Breaks Live. Stan in those liner notes said, somebody once said, never threaten a little man. He'll kill you. No matter how much each of us believes that violent conflict is to be avoided at all costs, there are some things that must be fought for. Even the most timid person can be brought to stand up for a belief. This is true. Don't mess with the quiet ones, boys and girls. All right, Harris and the Mare. An epic storytelling, right? Just fantastic. Stands on the acoustic, but you got Northumbrian small pipes from Grit Laskin. I mean, I couldn't pick those out of a lineup. Flute by Garnetti's on the flute on this one, and David Allen Eady is on penny whistle. So that gives you that great tone of this. And we get on to the story. He uses a storytelling technique called in medias res, which he basically gets to the culmination of the story at the start. Just think of like a TV episode that starts with something and then it flashes back and tells you how we got there. That's kind of what we're doing here. But he goes out for just a drink with his wife at the bar, and a drunk guy comes in and says, I'm going to leave this bar with your wife. And so the wife hits the guy, and then the guy strikes her down. So our protagonist, the husband's like, I'm in other words, a conscientious objector. He wasn't about violence, but I mean, somebody does that. He's about violence. So he grabs the guy by the throat, and the guy grabs a knife and stabs him. So the husband falls to the floor. The guy jumps on him and says he's going to finish him. No one helps this guy. They're all just watching in this bar. So the knife ends up in the drunk guy's heart. So the guy grabs his wife and gets out of there, but no one will help him. No one even opens the door for him. But he finds Harris and asks him to go get the Mare. So he does have one friend in the world, but what a story, man. What a story. Next up, we have Barrett's Privateers. Once again, Between the Breaks Live. It was released on the album Fogerty's Cove in 1976. It's a modern sea shanty, which I know River likes. It was apparently inspired after a session with Friends of Fiddler's Green at the Northern Lights Festival, Boreal. It's the unofficial anthem of many Canadian, especially Nova Scotian institutions, and even the Royal Canadian Navy. Stan Rogers in the liner notes for Fogerty's Cove said, it's from a story told to me by Bill Howell in Halifax, with thanks to the Friends of Fiddler's Green who inspired the style. Let's go. Barrett's Privateers, just an epic song, right? It's 9 verses, and it just takes you through their adventures, and it repeats a lot throughout each verse, so it's just a sing-along, right? Obviously, it's a sea shanty. But it took him 6 years to make it back to Halifax. In his 23rd year, so he's 17, and they went out and they were just supposed to, we'd fire no guns, shed no tears, right? That's what he keeps saying. We cruise the seas for American gold, we fire no gun, we'd shed no tears. But I'm a broken man on a Halifax pier, the last of Barrett's Privateers. He's the only one that lived through this after they were attacked. They sunk, and he lost both of his legs. But just what a fun song, man. I mean, it's not a fun outcome for the guy. I mean, I guess he's alive, but just really well done. All right, number 6, we got The Maid on the Shore from Fogerty's Cave in 1976. That was his first album. It's another fantastic storytelling, right? This captain, he's got all this money, he's got all this stuff as they're sailing the shores, but he sees the maid on the shore, roaming on the shore. And the song starts and ends the same way, right? In verse 1, there's a young maiden who lives all alone. She lives all alone on the shore. There's nothing she can find to comfort her mind but to roam all alone on the shore. And that's how it repeats. That's verse 1 is verse 9, the final verse. But in the middle there it says, Captain sees her as he's looking. And, he basically tells the crew, I have lots of silver and gold. I'll divide it with you. If you give me the shore, I got to have her, right? She's all, so with much persuasion, they get her aboard. She charms everybody. She sings everybody to sleep. And then she steals their stuff and steals the captain's sword and rows her way back to shore, right? And so at the end, it ends with that same verse. Now she's back all alone on the shore. So just fantastic story writing. Really quite a story for just a little bit over 3.5 minutes long. We'll kick off the top half of this list at number 5 with White Squall from Fresh Water, which our first song was from in 1984. It's about a young crewman being washed overboard and presumably drowning from a Great Lakes ship due to not following the safety procedures. It is the first track on the album. All right, White Squall. What a story again. I mean, I'm saying this on every song, but basically it's this older man who's working on this ship, right, that's telling you that they try to tell these old timers, no, they try to tell these younger guys who are eager. They don't have to tell them twice because they're eager to be out there. And this kid was telling mom about the girl he had just wed, and they tell him to be careful because he's saying, the night can be still, and all of a sudden, boom, the storm just comes up. But he was watching the deck that night, and he saw the kid laying on his back, looking at the stars, probably dreaming of his girl, and he didn't have the heart to tell him he should probably have a line on, and then it just came up, and he screamed at the kid to stay down, but there's no way the kid could hear him, and he heard the kid call his voice as he went overboard. So now the girl's doesn't have a guy anymore, though the wife doesn't have a husband anymore, and the guy's just sad about this. Like, just a fantastic story, man. Good choice for number 5. Now we're up to the shortest song on here, The Idiot. We're going to take it off Home in Halifax in 1993, but it's also found on Northwest Passage album as well. All right, The Idiot. And Stan did introduce this song by explaining this about the movement of people away from the Atlantic provinces of Canada to the province of Alberta for work. And that's what you see as he has to leave. He's not going to take anything for granted. He's not going to take a handout, right? He's going to go make his own way. But the refrain is, but I like being free, and that makes me an idiot. I suppose it would have been easier to stay in his hometown, right, and take the unemployment pay. But mad respect to Stan for doing what he did. All right, next up at number 3 from the Turnaround album in 1978, we have Oh No, Not I. Oh No, Not I. Once again, epic storytelling, right? And more of a rich arrangement than any song so far on this countdown. A Newfoundland sailor went walking on the strand. He spied a pretty fair young maid and took her by the hand. Oh, will you go to the Newfoundland along with me? He cried. The answer she gave him was, oh no, not I. If I were to marry you, on me 'twould be the blame. Your friends and relations would scorn me to shame. If you were born of noble blood and me of low degree, do you think I could marry you? It's, oh no, not me. So here's what I don't know in this song. Did he sleep with her? Or did she just think that he loved her, so she writes to him? Because it goes in 6 months and then 8 months and then 9 months. She ends up having a son, right? 8 months being over and 9 coming on. This pretty young, fair young maiden, she brought forth a son. She wrote a letter to her love to come most speedily, but the answer that he gave her to her was, oh no, not me. He said, this is some cold stuff. My pretty fair maid, the best thing you can do is take your child upon your back, and a begging you may go. And it's when that you get tired, you can sit down to cry and think of all the times when you said, oh no, not I. So I don't know if it's his kid or not his kid. I think it's his kid. And he's just like, you wouldn't marry me, so you're on your own. But either way, I mean, let me know what this song's about. I'm sure River knows, but on first listen, I was trying to figure that out. But hey, fantastic song, man. All right, we're up to number 2. You see it below. The Mary Ellen Carter we're going to go back to that Between the Breaks Alive. We had 3 songs in a row from that earlier from 1979. River mentioned this at the start, but I'm going to go into a little more detail. The song tells the story of a heroic effort to salvage a sunken ship, the Mary Ellen Carter, by members of her crew. The song chronicles the efforts to salvage the ship, implying that it will be raised on the following day. The song ends with an inspirational message to people, quote, to whom adversity has dealt the final blow, never give up, and like the Mary Ellen Carter, rise again. Now, the connection, and River mentioned this, to the sinking of the Marine Electric. On February 12, 1983, the ship Marine Electric was carrying a load of coal from Norfolk, Virginia, to a power station in Somerset, Massachusetts. The worst storm in 40 years blew up that night, and the ship sank at about 4 o'clock in the morning on February 13th. The ship's chief mate, 59-year-old Robert Bob Cusick, was trapped in the deckhouse as the ship went down. His snorkeling experience helped him avoid panic and swim to the surface, but he was left to spend the night alone on a partially deflated lifeboat he eventually reached. In water barely above freezing and air much colder, huge seas washed over him. Each time he was not sure that he would ever reach the surface again to breathe. Battling hypothermia, he was tempted to allow himself to fall unconscious and be washed away. Just then, he remembered the concluding stanzas of the Mary Ellen Carter that I just told you about. As he tells it in a documentary about Stan Rogers, he said he started to sing and soon was alternately shouting out, rise again, and holding his breath as the seas washed over him. At 7 o'clock that morning, a Coast Guard helicopter spotted him and pulled him to safety. Only 3 men of the 34 who had been aboard survived the wreck. After his ordeal, he wrote a letter to Stan Rogers telling him what had happened and crediting the song with saving his life. In response, Stan invited him to attend what turned out to be the second to the last concert Stan ever performed. Cusick lived another 30 years, and his testimony and activism in the aftermath of the accident spurred far-reaching maritime safety reforms. That's fantastic, and it really all owes to this song, right? Because he might not have lived if he wouldn't remember this song. That's some powerful stuff. All right, the Mary Ellen Carter, what a epic song. Learn some stuff here. So it starts out and everybody's drunk, right? And they wreck the ship and only 5 guys remain. And they want to raise it up, but the owners are like, hey, man, this thing's given us 20 years. The insurance paid for it all, so we're going to let it lay there. But the 5 guys that survived it just kept saying, hey, man, they talked about it sometimes all day long, it says, and they said, hey, we got to raise this up. And I didn't know this, but according to maritime laws, once you accept an insurance check, the ship no longer belongs to you. It just belongs to whoever because it's on the bottom of the sea. So they say it's worth $250,000. So they're going to rise it up. So they work all this time and try to get it right. So we never know if they actually get it on its way up. But they're convinced that next day they're going to rise the thing. But just a fantastic song, man. I mean, Stan just draws you in all of these songs, right? He just draws you in. And he was on the 12-string on this again. Got Grant Laskin on the mandolin. Garnett's back on the violin. So that gives it, you got a little bass action, a little acoustic. So gives it that great sound and tone. All right, here we go. Drum roll, please. Number 1, Northwest Passage from the album of the same name in 1981. It's one of his best-known songs, an a cappella song. It features Stan alone singing the verses with several guest vocalists harmonizing with him in the chorus. It recalls the history of early explorers who were trying to discover a route across Canada to the Pacific Ocean, especially Sir John Franklin, who lost his life in the quest for the Northwest Passage. The song's central theme is a comparison between the journeys of these past explorers and the singer's own journey to and through the same region. The singer ultimately reflects that just as a quest for a Northwest Passage might be considered a fruitless one, and that a viable and navigatable Northwest Passage was never found in the days of Franklin and his kind, a modern-day journey or along similar paths might meet the same end. The song also references the geography of Canada, including the Fraser River, to race the roaring Fraser to the sea on the western coast, the Beaufort Sea to the north, and the Davis Strait to the east. He is driving across the prairies, allowing him to view cities behind him fall and cities ahead rise. So just giving you a little background as we listen to number 1, Northwest Passage. All right, Northwest Passage, number 1 on Rivers' top 10 Stan Rogers songs, and a fitting number 1. The song is arranged and put together perfectly, I think, with there being harmonies on the chorus and then just him a cappella on the verses. The longer the song goes on, the more it pulls you into it. And it's a fantastic story. And he goes traditional here. It's chorus. It starts with chorus first. Chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse. So traditional. And a lot of these other songs don't do that. And I mean, classic songwriters, Dylan didn't do that. Like, it's not usually done. So it really makes it stick in your head more. River talked about it was voted as, besides, there was another song to be the Canadian national anthem. This was voted number 1. So, I mean, that tells you everything you need to know. But in 2005 CBC Radio 1 series, 50 tracks, the Canadian version, this song ranked 4th behind only Neil Young's Heart of Gold, Bare Naked Ladies, If I Had $1 Million, and Ian Sylvia's 4 Strong Winds as the 4th greatest song in Canadian history. And it has also been referred as one of Canada's unofficial anthems by former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. So, I mean, high praise, but just fantastic. And that's going to transition me into my favorite tracks. This one's tough. A lot of these are tough. They're getting tougher, it seems like, lately on top 10 lists. All these songs are really, really good. And they're all in a similar vein, right? And I really like this type of song. I really like this type of songwriting. So it's really hard to separate, but rather than give you 10 favorites, I had to make some cuts, but I liked them all. Honorable mentions: McDonald on the Heights, the first track that we heard. The Maid on the Shore, Oh No, Not I. I mean, that song's so cold-blooded, man. Faves are going to be Harris and the Mayor, the Mary Ellen Carter. You got to do it, right? Just a story behind the song and what it inspired. And, of course, this last song, Northwest Passage. But let me know what you think. What are your favorite Stan Rogers songs? Really enjoy this. I can't believe I'd never heard of Stan Rogers, right? Us in the U.S. sometimes miss out on a lot of great stuff. But thank you to River for putting this one together. Until next time, guys, I will see you.